My Dog Isn't My Dog by N3V3RMOR3_. My dog was a German Shepherd mix, handsome and sleek, with a bushy tail and one ear that hung a little limp and gave him some sort of permanent, inexquisite look. He'd keep my two kids company and protect them while they played in the woods that are part of the property my wife and I purchased this summer. Sometimes he wanted out late at night to piss, which is fine. We all have those nights. I'd drag my sleepy self out of bed and head to the back door to let him out, and anywhere from 30 seconds to 10 minutes later, he'd come back. Hated hanging around when it was cold out, but liked to indulge in a good perimeter search anytime the temperature went above 60 at night. I'd let him back in, we'd both head back to bed, and I'd forget about it by the morning. That's why it never occurred to me that something had changed when I saw him a few mornings ago. That characteristic half-floppy ear of his is now sticking straight up, just like its counterpart. I hadn't noticed it at the time, but I'd still felt off. I might have been able to dismiss it, to have shrugged the off feeling away once I noticed the change in his ear, even though it's not the same kind of unfamiliar off as when your friend gets a haircut. The sort of thing that fades and that you get used to, but a sort of off that exceeds my ability to express it properly. But there's one problem. His behavior hasn't changed one bit, but I know it isn't him anymore thanks to something that happened a couple days back. I'm not sure what happened or what's replaced him, or why it's acting exactly like he did. But the day after his ear changed, my kids were wandering around in the yard when they came running back in a state of distress. The dog was asleep in his bed, and so they'd gone out themselves. Our son is 13 and our daughter is 11. And we trust them not to go out at night, leave our yard, or go near anything suspicious, but instead to come right back and tell us. It's a small town, so I'm less afraid of people than I am of stray wildlife. And we're good friends with our neighbors on all sides and trust them to keep an eye out if necessary. Our trust in our kids wasn't broken that day, since they came running back in quite a state. They were both upset as hell, and it took my wife and I a minute to calm them. But when they had finally managed to explain what they'd seen, I immediately went to go check it out for myself. I knew the area they'd named the pond. It was a little pool of clear stream water where our dog had routinely gone to drink. I'm aware it's probably not a great idea to let even a large dog out at night if the property isn't fully fenced, but I wasn't thinking. I grew up with my grandfather, and we'd sometimes spend weekends up at a cabin he owned, where my uncle lived with a couple dogs that were basically allowed to roam the woods as they pleased when they weren't following us around and nothing ever happened to them, even alone. Cut me some slack. Anyway, when I reached the pool, it was fairly obvious what was wrong. The water was running red. It didn't take me long to figure out what was bleeding. All I had to do was look about 10 feet off, and I saw it. Stinking, bloody mess. It was much too large to shrug off as a fox leaving a rabbit behind, so against the wishes of my protesting nostrils, I stepped closer, and that's when I spotted it. Pinching my nose shut with one hand, I took a deep breath and got up close and personal with the putrid mass, using my free hand to tug at the little blue thing, which looked like a tag of some sort. with a disgusting sort of squelch. What I guess was the thing's head lurched forward. The tag was attached to a strap around its neck, and suddenly I realized what exactly was in front of me. I think you can guess. I sprinted back to the house as fast as I could, though I suppose it was needless. Whatever had taken the place of our dog was still sleeping, or pretending to, and had no idea I'd figured it out. My wife and kids were fine, though the kids were still a little freaked out. They hadn't gotten close enough to see the tag and had just been understandably upset by the gore. I explained to them that it was just a rabbit and that a fox had probably gotten it when it went for a drink, but gave my wife that we need to talk look over their heads. The dog isn't acting any different. The only physical difference is the ear, and now that I've checked, a lack of collar. We didn't notice this latter detail earlier because our dog has had fairly long hair that tended to grow over his collar, obscuring it from view. We're not sure what to do about it. Whatever it is was clearly able to shred a fairly large dog, and I don't want to find out what it can do to a human being. I'm not letting this thing be alone with my kids, but I don't want to clue it in that we've figured it out until I have an idea of what exactly it is and how we can get rid of it. Update. I pet the thing. I wish I hadn't, but I did. I was sitting in the armchair in the living room, and it walked by, and I did the same thing I'm used to doing whenever the dog would pass by that same spot. I pet its back. It isn't slimy. It doesn't smell bad. It's not an awful rough texture. It felt exactly like the dog I've had for the past 6 years, but for one thing, its bones. They're not right. It doesn't feel like a dog. It feels like something else crammed into the shape of a dog. The phrase bag of bones has never been more accurate. The bones are loose, too. They moved when I pet the fur over them. My blood ran cold, but I forced myself to act like everything is normal. I'm scared. Update number 2. It wanted out tonight. I didn't want to let it out, but I didn't know what else to do. So I let it out alone. Stupid idea. Instead of stopping to piss, it ran. Not walked. Not jogged. Ran for the fucking woods. First time it's done anything abnormal. I stayed and watched and listened, but there was mostly silence. When it came back, it was trotting obediently toward the back door when it stopped and just stared at me for one awful, bone-chilling moment. Then the moment passed and I ignored my urge to slam the door in its face as it walked up the stairs to the back door, licking my hand as it passed. I wouldn't include the detail if the water hadn't run pink when I went to wash my hands. I'm not sure what happened out there, but I have an idea.